Helloangel.design. Today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful cute top. You can see how that is. It's really nice. I love it. You can wear this top on a jeans, on a skirt, on anything. It's easy to make and step-by-step tutorial. Remember, support us by subscribing, turn on your notification bell button, select all options. If my tutorial is helpful, thumbs up. Make a comment down below if you have any question. Please follow us on Facebook at Helloangel.design. Follow us on Instagram at Helloangel.design. Follow us on Pinterest at Helloangel.design. Watch the video until the end so that you don't miss anything out. And let's get started. First thing that I'm going to do for the neckline, I'm going to place my measuring tape like this. I'm going to measure down 2 centimeters. I will take my armhole curve and connect it down. So I have connected down. What I'm going to do, I will take my scissors and cut it out. From here will be our new neckline. So once you have cut it out, the next thing that you have to do, you're going to add inches at the bottom. So you take a piece of paper, go ahead and place it like this. And place your piece of paper like this. This is just a basic line so that I know that the waistline is straight. I will place it like this and take my tape. I will just go ahead and tape it down. Once you have taped it down, the measurement that you take from the dart, if it's 2.5 centimeter or 3 centimeter, transfer that measurement at the bottom. So I will place my measuring tape like this. Mine is 2.5 centimeter. I'll go ahead and measure it all the way down and then connect the mark together. I have connected down. This is how it is. The next thing that I'm going to do, I will pick my tracing paper, place it at the neckline. So I will go ahead and take a few pins to secure the tracing paper together. I have secured it together. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and trace out the neckline. I have traced out the center front, the neckline and the shoulder. The next thing that you have to do, you take your measuring tape or your ruler. For the shoulder, because this is facing, I will take 6 centimeters like this. And I will come down to the center front. I will also measure down 6 centimeters. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure it all around 6 centimeters. Go ahead and trace out your front facing. Remember to add your seam allowance at the neckline, shoulder. Do not add seam allowance at the center front because it's going to be on fold. Once you have done that, your front facing is ready. Then we can now move to the back pattern paper. The next thing is for us to make adjustment at the neckline of our back pattern paper. What you are going to do, you take your measuring tape, place it at the neckline, and I'm going to take a measurement of 1.5 centimeter. You take your armhole curve, you go ahead and connect it down. Once you have done that, go ahead and also cut it out. I have cut it out. The next thing that you are going to do, you take your tracing paper, place it at the front. This will be the center front of the back. So you take your pin, secure the tracing paper with your pattern paper together. Once you have secured them together, go ahead and trace out the neckline and at the shoulder and also at the center back. And you also place your measuring tape. You measure all around 6 centimeters, just the same way we measure the front pattern paper. Once you have connect all your mark together, remember to also add your seam allowance around the neckline, shoulder, and inside of the facing, because this will be our facing. This is my fabric. I'm using this fabric to make this top. It's a cotton fabric. I have cut out my front facing and my back facing. For the back, you're going to cut 2 pieces. For the front, you're going to place it on fold and cut out just 1 piece. I have pinned my front and back pattern paper on my fabric, and I've also added all my seam allowance on my fabric. I'll go ahead and cut it out. Remember that the back is not on fold. You're going to cut 2 pieces. You can see how I fold my fabric. For the front, make sure you place your fabric on fold. So go ahead and cut out your fabric, and then you cannot pin your facing on your fabric and also cut it out. I have pinned my front facing, it's on fold. My back facing, I'm cutting 2 pieces, it's not on fold. All you have to do, go ahead and start cutting your facing. You already add seam allowance on your facing. You don't need to add any more seam allowance. I cut out a long piece of fabric. This is how it is. It's on fold. The length of my fabric, you place your measuring tape. The length of my fabric is 8 inch. If you're using centimeter, measure 20.3 centimeter. So to get the width of your fabric, your waist measurement times 2. Let's say your waist measurement is 30 and you times that by 2. The measurement that you get, that will be the width of your fabric, because I'm going to gather this fabric at the waistline of my top that I'm making. You can add few inches to that if you want more volume. And I also cut bias binding. I'm going to use bias binding to bind the armhole. I'm also going to use bias binding to bind the bottom edge of my ruffle pieces that I'm going to gather on this top that we are making. So let's tackle the top together. First thing that you have to do, you take your facing, you're going to put the both facing together. You put them together like this. I have iron interfacing on my facing. You can go ahead and iron interfacing on your facing. So I'll put the both facing together, secure them together with a pin. Once I am done with that, I will take it to my sewing machine and stitch it with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once you have stitched your both facing together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, make sure you press the seam apart. You take your front top, you take your scissors, make sure to notch where the dart is, and you also do the same thing at the waistline. Once you have done that, you remove the pins, then place your pin where the dart ends like this, and pull your pattern paper forward. You take your marker, you just go ahead and give it a mark like this. Leave the pin the way it is, you turn it over and give it a mark like this. Once you have done that, you also repeat the same process on the waistline. Then remove the pin like this, place it in between. This is where my dart starts and it ends at the waistline. Place it in between like that. Pull your pattern paper forward. Take your marker, just give it a little mark, and then turn it over and repeat the same process. Once you have done it like that, then go ahead and remove the pins from your pattern paper. Once you have removed the pins from your pattern paper, you place your roller like this. I will just open it so that you guys can see it properly. You place your roller. This is the side that you place it, and then you go ahead and connect the mark together like this. And then you twist it gently and connect the mark together. From the waistline, this is my mark right here. Place your ruler or your measuring tape and go ahead and connect the mark together. And you also repeat the same process like that. This is how you will connect your mark together. It is very easy. And you also go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side of your front top. Once you have connected all your dart together, all you have to do, put them together, take it to your sewing machine and top stitch. And you take the other side, take it to your sewing machine, top stitch, and the side that you repeat the same process, take it to your sewing machine, go ahead and top stitch, and the same thing, go ahead and top stitch. And you also repeat the same process with your back pattern paper. Go ahead and stitch your dart together. I have stitched my dart together. So when you stitch your dart together, what you're going to do, you open your thread like this. You just go ahead and tie a knot so that it doesn't lose. Just go ahead and tie a knot about 3 to 4 times and then cut out the excess of the thread. The next thing that you have to do, you open your front top, you pick your back top. This is my back top fabric. Put the both shoulder seam together, pick the second pieces, you repeat the same process. Make sure that both front fabric are facing each other. Take it to your sewing machine, stitch the both shoulder seam with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Depends on the seam allowance that you add on your fabric. Go ahead and stitch it together. I have stitched the shoulder seam together. I zigzag it with my zigzag stitches. The next thing that you have to do, take your facing. I fold inside 1 centimeter because I'm going to top stitch. I want the raw edges to be hidden. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the both shoulder seam together. Make sure that both seam are matched, and I will secure that with a pin. And I will repeat the same process on the other side, both shoulder seam. Make sure they are matched, and I will secure that with a pin. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pin the facing around the neckline of my top. Just go ahead and pin it around. I have pinned around the neckline of my top. The next thing that I'm going to do, I will take it to my sewing machine, top stitch with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once I am done with that, I will take my scissors, snip around the curved edge, push the seam allowance towards the facing, and top stitch all over again. I will show you that when I'm stitching on my sewing machine. Once I am done stitching the facing together, the next thing that you have to do, you're going to bind the armhole. So you pick your bias binding. When you are going to bind the armhole, instead of placing it at the front and this fabric will be showing inside your top, but I'm going to bind my armhole different. I want this fabric to be showing at the front of my top. I will place my bias binding at the back of my top. Go ahead and stitch it all around, fold it inside and then fold it again and top stitch, and my bias binding will be showing at the front of my top. So go ahead and stitch that together. I have stitched it together. You can see how I use my bias binding to bind the armhole, and I've also used my facing to top stitch around the neckline. Like I said before, I fold inside 1 centimeter and then I top stitch. The next thing that you have to do, you're going to put both top together. You're going to stitch the side seam of the top. You just put them together. Make sure that both front fabric are facing each other. Go ahead and top stitch with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Depends on the seam allowance that you add on your fabric. You also go ahead and top stitch the other side seam together. Once you have done that, the center back, you can take it to your overlock, overlock the raw edges, or use zigzag to overlock the raw edges. I have stitched my side seam of my top together. This is how it is, and I'll also overlock it with my zigzag stitches. The next thing that you have to do, you take your ruffle fabric. I have stitched my gather stitch thread on my ruffle fabric, so I will just go ahead and gather it around once I am done, and I will pin them in place. I have pinned them together. This is how it is. The next thing that you have to do, take it to your sewing machine, top stitch with your seam allowance. Depends on the seam allowance that you add on your fabric. Go ahead and top stitch. Once you have done that, remove your gather stitch thread, take it to your overlocker, overlock the raw edges, or use zigzag to overlock the raw edges. The next thing that you have to do, you're going to stitch your invisible zipper at the center back. You can use any zipper, but I'm using invisible zipper. From the center back, measure inside the seam allowance that you add on your center back. Go ahead and pin your invisible zipper at the center back. Before you pin it at the center back, you take your measuring tape or your ruler. From the waistline, I will place my measuring tape like this. I'm going to measure down 2.5 centimeter or 1 inch because I want my invisible zipper to below the waistline. And I will also repeat the same process on this side. Once you have done that, go ahead and pin your invisible zipper at the center back. And if you watch my video, I have shown how to pin invisible zipper at the center back. All you have to do, pin it all around. Thread your needle, use hand stitch to stitch it in place, and then remove the pins, take it to your sewing machine and top stitch. I have stitched my zipper. This is how it looks. You just go ahead and zip your top. This is how the center back of your top will look. And you can see my waistline, the both waistline seam are matched. This is how it will look right now. The next thing that you have to do, just go ahead and open your zipper. This is my facing. I'm going to turn my facing like this. And I will go ahead and pin all the way down where the facing ends. So once you have pinning like this, the next thing that you have to do, go ahead and finish the neckline and stitch it to where the facing ends. Once you have done that, you can now turn it inside out. So once you have stitched that together, you also repeat the same process on the other side of the facing. Once you have done that, you just go ahead and finish the center back. Put the both center back together like this. You go ahead and stitch it all the way down. Once you have stitched that together, you can also use that opportunity to hem your top. Fold inside 1 centimeter, fold it again 1 centimeter, and top stitch. But the way I am going to hem my top, I will take my bias binding just the same way I use bias binding to bind the armhole of my top. That is how I'm going to use bias binding to bind around the bottom edge of my top. So go ahead and stitch that together, and I will show you how mine finally look. This is the final look of my top. This this is how it is. It's really beautiful and easy to make a step-by-step tutorial. And this is the back of the top, and this top you can wear it on a jeans, on a skirt, on a tight, on anything. It's really perfect top to make. Please support us by subscribing, turn on your notification bell button and select all option. If my tutorial is helpful, thumbs up. Make a comment down below if you have any question. Thank you all so much for watching. You all should have a wonderful day. Bye.